Hey, what's going on, guys? We are driving now west towards Saskatchewan on the, I guess it's the Trans-Canadian Highway. We're on the Canadian Route 17. We just left Thunder Bay about an hour ago. It's pretty cold up here, even though we're almost in June. It's 30 degrees plus. So it's still pretty chilly up here, but beautiful. And it occurred to me that maybe I'll do another video. Some of you all have asked for us to do some videos as we travel, so I was trying to think of a subject. Now and so I came up with one, which I'm going to call the do's and don'ts of using a radar detector. I've been driving with a radar detector, probably a radar detectors in one form or another, for just about 45 years, so a lot of experience with driving with radar detectors. But even so, sometimes you make mistakes because you misinterpret what a radar detector is potentially doing. So here we are. We're on an open road here. We're in a very remote part of Canada right now. In fact, most of Canada, I think, is remote when you get out of the cities. And they don't have interstates, really, cross-country interstates like the U.S. does. So let's start with a do. I had done a video maybe a week ago or so about what I found techniques to drive with a radar detector at night. And it occurred to me some of these techniques also work during the daytime. So just give you an example. We are on a road that's very, very sparsely traveled. So you got to keep in mind, when you're on a sparsely traveled road, that's when you're at the greatest risk for getting hit with a radar detector. With a radar shot. Because if the officer is not operating constant on, you're going to get hit with radar without generally any warning. And if it's sparsely traveled, there may very well not be a vehicle ahead of you to get targeted first, so you get the alert, right? So, on the other hand, that's from a stationary position, let's say. When you're in a remote area, also, officers tend to travel in a very remote section of highway because they're covering a patrol area, and so they're not going to stay stationary. They're going to be mobile and rolling. So you have vehicles coming the other way. So what are some of the experiences I can share you with? Let me first share with you an experience that I had when I was doing a cannonball-like race back in 2009. I was driving with Radar. Roy, actually, it's a navigation. He was like a navigator, and I was the driver. And we had left Orlando, heading to, I think, the first leg of the race was Baton Rouge. So we had to go up north on Interstate 4 or something like that, and then get to Interstate 10, something of that nature. Maybe it was like we got into 75 and then came into Interstate 10, and then we headed west on I-10. Well, it was a race, and there were 78 vehicles in the race. And I forget what position we had started with. I think it was like 42. And then they were timed events. So we would clock out, or clock in, I should say, and they would time who would do the best from from the starting to the clock out for the day. And, any of you who know me or know of some of my videos that have been out there or others' videos, I drive quickly. Radar detectors to me are a means to an end. That's pretty much what it is. It's for situational awareness, first and foremost, and then to serve as a tool in the event that you're driving above the speed limit. And in the case of the race that we were in, we were certainly driving. Now, I had a modified E39 5 Series, which was really a quintessential high-performance sedan from BMW in the day, Autobahn. And the top speed on that vehicle was about 172, and the posted limit, I think, in 2009 on I-10 could have been 70, something to that effect. So we were tearing up the road, and I was doing up to 172 miles an hour on the interstate, and we were passing all of the vehicles from our 42nd position. We were catching up to everybody, and we ultimately ended up getting out in the very front. And so I realized we were driving at the time with a Beltronics STIR, which I think came out in 2008 thereabouts, and also the 9500 CI, which had laser jammers, and I may even have had a blinder on the vehicle. So we were pretty loaded. Now, the internet, I think it was like an iPhone, early iPhone, so we didn't have the internet, certainly not the app, so we didn't have Waze or things like that. And earlier in the day, a Corvette got jacked for 150. He went to jail. And another one, Leon, was in a souped-up Shelby with another driver, and they got a ticket. I don't know what speed it was, in excess of 90, I think, and they were using planes. So, our cars were all badged up, and it was a big event. So, police knew that we were there, cruising. So, one thing I realized, when you drive at a certain threshold of speed, I'm not talking a simple 20 or 25 over. I'm talking, we were almost 100 over the 102 over the posted limit. And I was flat out on this vehicle, on this road. So I found, even with the most sensitive detectors, driving ahead of the radar detector is what I came up or coined the name. And what does that mean? It means that you don't wait for your radar detector to alert, particularly, if there's very little on the road because of that I/O. So I drive ahead of the radar detector. You can only do this basically during the day. If you have good eyesight, and you look way ahead, and you try to pick out vehicles that could be a threat to you. And in our case, in Florida, state troopers have a two-tone vehicle. I think it's like beige and black. And they're pretty identifiable unless they're unmarked. And we were on a stretch of road about 30 minutes outside of Baghdad, which is pretty western on the panhandle of Florida. And I spotted from a great distance what I thought was what appeared to be a state trooper. So I'm looking down at my speedometer, 168, 172, something like that. And I hit on the brake, and I hit on the brakes hard. Very hard. And even with our souped up brakes, you just can't stop on a dime from from a high speed. It takes some time. And during the time that I was braking hard, our radar went off. I think it was the 34-7. And immediately, the guy puts on his lights and comes right over the median. Wasn't even a good place for him to turn around, but he just came right over this big grass median that went down like that. And I was thinking to Roy, should I run? He's like, don't you dare even attempt to run. It was just as well, because they poured on us like molasses. They just, number of vehicles, and they were aware of us traversing the state. So I really didn't know what my speed was. And as it turned out, I had gotten it down from 170 in that range down to 90. So that was only 20 over. So he still cited me for a ticket, but we didn't go to jail that day. And it was funny because we got to a gas station. We finally, after they released us, got to a gas station, and we filled up in Baghdad. And there was this buzz going on at the gas station about a silver car that was caught at very high speed. And they figured we went to jail and the car was impounded. Little did they know that I was actually able to outbrake most of the officer. So the moral of that long story is, if you're driving fast enough, particularly on a quiet road, drive ahead of your radar detector and really scan ahead and look for things and back off. So that's one thing. I had indicated in the last video we did about driving at night, I'm here and I realized that technique can be used during the day. So this posted limit here is 90 kilometers an hour, which is about 56 US, really low speeds up here in Canada. So I'm doing about 120 to 130. And again, earlier today we had and I'll post that video, an instant on K-band shot from a vehicle that was parked on the opposite side of the road on the shoulder, and it looked like a regular pickup truck. It was an unmarked vehicle. Fortunately, the unit in R9 alerted, and we were able to get our speed down. But beyond that, you have to be careful when nobody is ahead of you again, even during the daytime. And then I look ahead for a vehicle that's way down the road, and if you can see one, then I slingshot. So I feel comfortable kicking my speed up, going up to and behind the vehicle that's ahead of me, and then passing, and then looking for the next vehicle. So that technique that I recommend doing at night, you can do during the day as well. What else? Another experience didn't work out well for us. Victoria and I were leaving the Outer Banks, Cape Hatteras, and if you've ever driven that stretch of road off of the Cape back to like I-95, it's sort of like what it's up here, mostly wooded, 2-lane road, and the speed limit maybe, 55, and I think there are some areas where it goes up to 70 if I'm not mistaken, or 65, something like that. But we were on this stretch of road, and I think we were driving at the time with an Escort red line, I forget what it was, EX, I guess it was, or whatever that one was, which is a sensitive radar detector. And we were picking up this KA band. Every once in a while it would go off and then stop. And this was going on for miles. And I misinterpreted what the alert was, and this is where my downfall was. With a super sensitive detector and it going off a little bit and then getting quiet, I misinterpreted that. One can misinterpret that as being the threshold of a weak signal, perhaps a constant on, right? So if you're behind a vehicle, or if you have a single antenna detector and you don't get the directional information, you could think somebody's behind you and pretty much outside or just on the edge of your detection, right? Especially if there's curves and a lot of foliage. And I misinterpreted what that was. And what it turned out to be, by misinterpreting it, I drove faster, 75, maybe 80. And this stretch of road, I think, was 55. So I'm doing about 20, 25. And so I just started discounting those alerts. And it was an empty road again, not much traveled. And I came around the bend, the sweeping bend. And from a distance, a great distance, I saw a vehicle on the shoulder, on my side of the road. And I get lit up with 34/7, and I'm such a distance away. I was like 3,000 plus feet. It was pretty far away. And of course I broke and got my speed down. And I figured at that distance I was able to outbrake the officer. And as it turned out, I was wrong. I didn't outbrake the officer. Excuse my hand here. I had to adjust the phone. And that sucker lights me up. And he nailed me for, I think it was 75 and a 55. And again, North Carolina is, I think, sort of like Texas. They considered it, at least at that speed, like a misdemeanor or something. They wanted to require a court hearing. Out of state, obviously, that's difficult. I was able to call. Unfortunately, I'm respectful, in this case, very respectful to the police officer. I called the court and said it's not, it's just after the ticket was issued. and I was able to make a deal. They called the officer. It was pretty easy, and got the ticket down substantially, and it wasn't that much. But the moral of that story is, if you're getting a weak detection, it may very well be IO, as you originally think. But I wrote off as a weak detection. So there is a downside to having these super sensitive detectors, R3, R4, R8, R7, now certainly the unit in R9, super sensitive detector. And you got to be careful not to misinterpret that. What's another don't to do with a radar detector is I was in a construction zone. We were driving across I-10 again, and I think we were in Louisiana. And coming out of Texas, the speed limit was 80 in a section of it. So we were in Louisiana, and I don't know if the speed limit was 70, I forget, 75. And I went through a construction zone. Now, it wasn't operating, and it was 2 lanes. And I started getting a 34/7 alert. And if you've ever been in a construction zone, a lot of times there are K-band speed signs or K-band transmitting devices with construction signs that may or may not be on. And in this case, it was a 34/7 KA signal. And so the detector's going off for an extended period of time, and I'm thinking, okay, well, it's a KA speed sign, and it's pretty straight shot, so you can get real far propagation of radar and get a long alert. And I misinterpreted that. Again, misinterpreting an alert. And as it turned out, it was an unmarked state trooper in a black SUV sitting in the right lane with a stalker bull. And here I am coming up behind him. I'm probably doing about 85, 15 over, 20 over. And I come up behind him, and I'm about maybe 10 car lengths passing other vehicles in the left lane, he's in the right. And I brake, and I really actually realize that it's a state trooper. And I slow down and get in behind him. And then he slows down, and I figured, okay, this is not a good situation. So now I'm down to 45, and he's ahead of me, and he's going down to 45. And I knew I was going to get a citation, which of course I did. So again, an amateur mistake, or a mistake that you've driven with radar detectors, you think you understand and misinterpret what it is. And there you go, another don't with a radar detector. So there's like 5 experiences. I've won some, and I've lost some. And I hope some of these experiences, if you have any more experiences, your own particular types of encounters, I'd love to hear them. There are others I could go on, but this is a long enough video, and hopefully you guys get the point. So anyway, drive safe. Be sure to visit radarbusters.com if you want the R9. Please get on a waiting list. We're going to open that up to orders very shortly, probably within the next week. So if you're all interested, please get on there and get your name on the list, because there's only going to be a certain amount of these things available, and there's not going to be many sources for these things other than custom install shops. So for those who want to do it themselves or take it to their own custom install shop, be sure to give us a visit. Also on Radar Busters online, it's Radar Busters Online on Facebook. And of course, you're looking at YouTube, give us a thumbs up, like, and we'll get more videos out to you here. So anyway, take care. God bless. We'll talk to you soon.